I'm so glad and excited to meet you here and see you. Yeah.
I remember, my goodness, when you first came to Peniel Seminary, you were a skinny young teenager, and I was much skinnier too.
That's true. You had more black hairs in those days.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yes. So at the age of 17, you came to Peniel campus.
Yes, I also remember the date is the 2nd of May, 1983. I stepped into Peniel
campus.
campus in an evening, 6 o'clock.
Oh, 6 o'clock in the evening, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And you studied there for 5 years.
Yeah, I studied 5 years there.
And at that time, there were about around 40 students, 40 male students studying at Peniel.
Yeah, less than that is,
Okay.
yeah, like 25 or 30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, in the beginning
Okay.
beginning time.
Okay.
But by the time I graduated in 1988, after 5 years of being there in the Peniel campus, the number had grown to close to 100.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us one most significant experience at Peniel?
Oh yes, well, it's difficult to limit to just one because it's 5 years. A prominent time of my life is 5 years I've been there, and I just praise God for my life in Peniel. Let me just tell you before going to any incident. It is there where I received a proper training for ministry, not only in preaching and teaching but practical work. I learned cooking in Peniel because we were supposed to go and help the cook and then to make Kerala parota or anything. So after graduation, if I have to cook for 100 or 200 people, I didn't have any fear. Easily I would prepare food for those people. I could easily, and I cooked in many places in North India. And then I thank God, painting I learned from there. We were like 4 or 5 people painting all the buildings in the Peniel campus in that time. It's like 88. We had the main building and the library building and the
3 buildings.
Three buildings, like 2 floor here and 2 floor here and 2 floor here. So we were after the classes we were painting the whole building, and we really praise God because we will go up to 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock and then go to sleep. After the work, go to sleep, and then again next day we attended the class. And I also thank God for the library work. I did not know that I would be heading another training institute in the future, but my exposure to the library was again very helpful for me. So for last 4 years, 84 through 88, I was responsible for the library, where I would collect all the magazines and I would bind it, and then all those things were stored up for all those years. And I just thank God I learned binding and book binding, bookkeeping, and then get to know which topic this book is for, and then the dual system, the library system we learned, and then I would keep all the books there. Then it was about 10,000 volumes, but now
Well, that many at that time.
Oh yes, yeah, and then well, I remember every year when you come, you bring in so many bundles of books, and then we had the excitement when the books bundles are opened, we have shirts or and other things kept there. So some of us who were in the vacation time doing this library work are rewarded with these shirts and other clothes, and we just thank God for that things in that place. And another thing I remember is the bookshop we had in those days. We had it is my second year that you told me let's have a bookshop started here, and a small amount was given, and then we went and purchased books and started selling it to the people. But in the second year it grew very fast, and then we took the bookstop to all the
Places
nearby,
where we went to conduct conventions.
yes, good news conventions and other conventions. We would carry them by the two bicycles. We had two bicycles in those days in the
Yeah.
campus, so we would carry the maximum and then have the tables. And sometimes I also remember we had very big display in big meetings, like 5 or 6 big large tables full of books, and that has really grown in those days, and that was a very powerful way of ministry that had happened.
There were not very many Christian bookshops available
No
in
bookstore
these
in that.
villages other than the books we took.
Yeah, and even in that area,
Yeah.
the bookstore, we had to go to the OM bookshop in Ernakulam, and there was no other bookstore in those days. But ours was helpful to meet the needs of the people in those days.
So there was classroom training, teaching, as well as the practical
Oh yes,
field work.
yes,
What you learn on campus during the weekends, and then especially during the vacation times for 3 months, students were out in the field, and just like they are doing today. Actually, in those days, students did more field work,
yes.
and I spent more time there also during that time. And we used to have good news conventions. We would go to a village for 3 nights,
Yeah.
and we didn't even have a vehicle in those times. We had to depend on you remember those days, public
yes.
transportation.
Yeah, I remember those days. We will be a team of like 5 or 6 or 10 or sometimes up to 20 brothers will be going to one place. If it is just a distance of like 3 or 4 or 5 miles, it is like we will be walking, or one side we may go by a hired jeep, and way back we will be walking. And we just thank God for the other equipments like the film projector, which was purchased in those days, and we had the joy of carrying that projector, though it was heavy, on our shoulder to many places.
And we would be there for 3 nights, 3
Yeah,
evenings,
yeah.
and then we would go to another village, and
Oh,
then
yes.
another village, and another. Do you know that in every one of those villages where there were no churches in those days, we conducted these meetings in open fields and outdoor places? Today, in every one of those villages, there are Bible preaching churches.
That's really exciting, because in those days when we go, walking several kilometers, just shouting the Bible verses in a line, we were not that much aware that we are actually sowing the seed, while preaching the gospel or conducting open air preaching. But we praise God for the wonderful work that God has done, and the churches are there. Yeah, I came to know that there are churches in all these places. I praise God for that. Yeah, especially looking back to North India, initial years were so difficult in many ways, but we praise God. Just like you said, when we started the Peniel Bible Seminary, in those nearby areas there were no churches, and now there are many Bible believing churches. It was almost the same thing 25 years before when we came to North India. We would go and preach the gospel in a place and then distribute the gospel tracts, and before even they read it and come to know that it's about Jesus Christ, we would move from that place, because anything can happen if they know that it is about Jesus Christ. But now that places are, when we go, there are several churches in those cities. So that's a great joy to see that any investment that we make in God's kingdom is producing much
So
fruit.
sowing the seeds in tears now actually is a great time of
Harvest.
harvesting large number of souls, not only in South India but even in the vast fields of northern India.
That's
Well,
true.
in 2011, Vinitha and I, we were there, and you took us to one of the churches. God has used you to start. And tell us a little bit about that church. In that village, when you went there were no believers,
Yeah,
right?
this happened just 2 or 3 years before the Lord led us to that place, to those places, and there were no churches in that whole area, and no believers, and it was totally a dark place. And we also had another training center that helped the students to go out, something similar to Peniel,
Yes.
having the students going out and doing outreach. And in just few years time we are able to see about 75 to 100 people coming for worship in that place, and none of them Christians, all from Hindu and other families of and worshiping the Lord in the North Indian language, Hindi.
Yes.
And that's been a joy. And then it was not easy. There was opposition. The work of the evil spirit was very evident. It sometimes it is like casting out evil spirit first before you start the worship. But we praise God for the openness, and several families who were so desperate didn't have peace. The Lord led them into this church, and they are blessed. And we praise God for leading us to that place. And thank you for visiting
Yeah.
in the church. Yeah.
And yeah, it was a great joy for Vinitha and I to come and see how God is using you. Not only that you are planting churches, but you have some disciples like you are my disciple, and you have some disciples that live a very simple life, but you teach them half of the day, and then in the afternoons or weekends you send them out, and you started this one church.
Yeah.
Now that is when we were there in 2011. Now this is 2013, and tell us how many churches your students have gone out and started within this last 2 years.
Well, uh, we wanted to see all these students who are completing their studies will have their own churches. So what happened was, from the center where we are placed, we have given the field in one place. When the Lord is opening a door in one area, we appointed one senior student and then one or two first year students to that place, so that he will go 2 or 3 or 4 times in a week and visit the places and pray for the people and have the meetings once or twice in a week. So even while he is a student, he can have his work started there, and after the graduation he can rent a room somewhere nearby and start the worship there. So right now we have 5 places similar to that, which is already there, where the meetings are going on, and the students are going to take rooms and to have churches started there.
The Spirit of God is moving,
That's true.
and we want to move along with Him. So those who've been partners of Peniel and the ministry of the India Mission for Evangelism, they have prayed, they have been praying and invested their resources and gladly gave. And would you say down through these years, how many thousands of people been touched through the ministry of the India Mission for Evangelism and Peniel?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. Probably only eternity will reveal the truth.
Exactly.
But I know that all the graduates of Peniel have a sincere heart to serve God and a passion for the perishing souls, and that fire that we receive from Peniel in evangelism, church planting, and leading people to Christ is still burning, and the work is going on. And we praise God for, it's not just the Peniel products. When they go out and get another disciples and train them, it's like generations,
Yes.
spiritual generations that are being made.
Yes.
And we praise God for that.